Um, there are a couple of other interesting cinematic devices used in the Great Train Robbery that I'd like to call to your attention, because these became common uses up till today. They're still using these same cinematic devices. They are ways of telling a story. Perhaps the most important is called intercutting. Now, for instance, if this scene that you're observing me is suddenly stopped, and the next scene or next shot that you see is a car driving along a road, you and I, observing these two different scenes, would presume that they are probably happening at the same time and have a connection. Maybe somebody is driving up to stop in front of the building, and he's going to run in and tell me, "Hey, you need to come. Your son has been hit by a car." Well, those two different scenes, the scene of me here and then the scene of somebody driving along the street, is referred to as intercutting, or it's also called parallel cutting. Events paralleling or occurring simultaneously. Well, in the Great Train Robbery, you will see intercutting when the bandits on their horses are riding along, and then it cuts or intercuts to a scene in a saloon where a group of people are dancing. We have now come to realize that these events are occurring primarily at the same time. So parallel cutting, intercutting, also called cross-cutting, those three different terms, all mean the same thing. And it was an ingenious device as a way of telling a story. The events could be brought together by just simply cutting from one scene to the other. Another device that's used, which is used very frequently today, is called rear projection. That's when a film is used as the backdrop of what's going on in the scene that is being filmed. A film within a film. If I were in a car right now, I'd be being filmed, but with a film behind me, we could change that driving the car to Paris, France, or Egypt, by just simply placing a film of those two different countries behind me. Today we call that the blue screen or the green screen, and it's used in film after film, whether it was Star Wars or the Harrison Ford films whose names escape me, but you know what I'm referring to. So those are two different devices. Rear projection, or today they call it green screen, when you have a film as a backdrop or background to what is being photographed, and then cross-cutting or intercutting. The final cinematic device, which you and I take for granted, just as we take cross-cutting and rear projection for granted, is the close-up. Now, in the early days of filmmaking, it was thought that you should always photograph the full body of the character, because people were paying a price. They wanted to see the full individual. But as the technology developed, that is, as the lenses were improved so that they could create close-ups, or if they decided to, by moving the camera closer to the individual to show just half his body or the face, the close-up was then it became an interesting and appealing cinematic characteristic of the film. Well, in tonight's film, or in today's film, depending upon when this is being shown to you, the Great Train Robbery does indeed introduce a close-up. It will be just half of the body of the character that is shown. And because it became so appealing and popular with the early day film goers, they used it either in the beginning or in the end of the film, depending upon whichever the theater manager chose to use. Well, all right, The Great Train Robbery runs only about 14 minutes. Once again, 14 shots for 14 scenes, directed, photographed, edited by Edwin S. Porter from the studios of Thomas A. Edison's location.